Hi everyone, it's Lindsay and welcome back to another video. Today I've got a couple of fun cards to share with you. These are both using the mirror image stamp from Crackerbox and Suzy stamps. Here's a look at this stamp. It's essentially just a very large piece of red rubber, but it's high quality red rubber. This also measures a full 4.5 by 4.25 by 5.5. So it is a full A2 size, and I'll show you that here as I measure it. But on one side, it's nice and matte and rubbery. That's the side you're going to stamp on and use. On the other side, it's more of a slick surface, but it sticks really well to any surface you're working on. So for my projects today, I'm going to be working with this stamp in my MISTI. I've went ahead and taken out my foam piece. That is because my red rubber stamps have the foam on them. That piece of foam supplements on your clear stamps where the foam is missing. So if you have that foam, go ahead and take it out. If you're using bare red rubber, leave it in. I'm going to go ahead and place my red rubber mirror stamp in the bottom right hand corner, and then right over the top of that I'll place my larger stamp. This is the sorting hat from Harry Potter. I am a huge Harry Potter fan. I'm going to make a Harry Potter inspired birthday card. So I wanted this hat to face the opposite way of how it was. My sentiment is lined up the other way, so I needed it to look like he was looking to the left instead of to the right once he's stamped. So I went ahead and inked him up with some icing on the cake ink. It's a nice rich dark brown from Catherine Pooler, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp him a few times. I'm using my MISTI so I can do that on this red rubber. Now, this is a dye ink. It will stay wet a little bit longer on this red rubber because it's essentially a non-porous surface, which it's a slicker surface you're working on. It won't dry as quickly. I'll go ahead and take my piece of cardstock. I'm lining it up in the bottom right-hand corner again, both the bottom and the side, and I'll go ahead and give that a firm press with my fingers. I find my fingers work well enough for this. I don't need to get out any extra tools, and then I can peel that straight up, and I've got my mirror image stamp. Now, it's still a little splotchy, but it's better than what I would do just by the regular method. So I'm going to go ahead, but I still want to go ahead and add another layer onto this. I'm using my MISTI so I can do that. I added more ink, and then I'll lay my paper right down there in the corner again and pull it up, and there I've got a nice dark stamp. It looks like I've stamped it straight from the stamp itself, but I used a mirror image stamp, which is so awesome that I can use it in my MISTI and do multiple stampings. It's super easy to clean. I just use a baby wipe and wipe off the extra ink. And that's all there is to it. Now to finish this card off, I'm going to go ahead and take some Over Coffee ink. This is a lighter brown ink, about a shade lighter. And I'll use my blending brushes just to quickly color in that sorting hat. Give it a nice brown, kind of worn, dirty look. I also fussy cut it out very quickly right up to the stamp lines, and then just to give it a nice finished look, I'm taking a dark brown marker. This is Espresso Truffle, a memento marker, and I'm just going around the edges, the cut edges, to give it a nice finished look. I find this really helps with my fussy cut images, especially if I make a mistake anywhere. It kind of fills in those gaps and gives me a nice solid line all the way around. There's a closer look at the sorting hat all done. It was really quick and easy to use that mirror image stamp. I was surprised at how easy it was, to be honest. So now moving on, I'm going to create the background of the card. I went ahead and taken 4 pieces of colored cardstock. I've got a maroon, a dark green, forest green, kind of a golden yellow, and then a nice royal blue. These are all the colors of the Hogwarts houses. I'm starting with Gryffindor, and I'm going to go ahead and just stamp with icing on the cake right over each one of those little rectangles. The house, what are those things called? It's called a crest, I believe. I looked it up. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp those each over their coordinating color. So I started with Gryffindor, and I stamped that on the maroon. Then I moved on to Slytherin, I'm stamping that on the green. The Hufflepuff will be on that golden yellow color. And then finally, I've got Ravenclaw, and I will stamp that on the royal blue. For each one of these, like I said, I'm using the icing on the cake to keep everything nice and coordinated. Sorry about my head. I wanted to look straight over to get these perfect. These are a little small, so some of these are hanging off the edges. That's okay. That was the look I was going for. I didn't want the whole thing on there. I wanted it to be more zoomed in. Now to make these look a little bit more vintage, I'm going to come in with some of that over coffee ink and my blending tool, and I'll just blend right on the edges of that. Also, to give it more of a darker edge, I really want these to look separated. Once I place these all on the panel, I'm going to go ahead and dip each one of my sides straight into my ink pad. That's going to give me a nice dark edge just to help with the separation once I put them all on this panel. I've marked out where each one goes, so the Hogwarts is going to go in the top left corner. That's why I have those little letters there. The H stands for Hogwarts, and I'll start with that. I've also cut down my panel to 4 inches by 5 1/4. So I measured out each one of my rectangles to be halfway between the horizontal length and also the vertical length. That way every piece is going to fit directly on this rectangle. I don't have to do any guesswork. I'm using some Nuvo adhesive to place these on, and again, just placing these right up against each other, making sure they're in the corners and all the white cardstock is covered. Essentially, this is going to look like 4 separate little rectangles on this piece of cardstock. So once I have it all done, here's how it looks. I absolutely adore the way this turned out. Now, there's also a stamp with the Hogwarts crest on it with all of the different ones that you could put right in the middle, and that would make a great card. Color it in, cut it out, place that right in the center. However, I'm going with the Sorting Hat, and I'm going with this sentiment. This is one of my favorite sentiments from the Harry Potter themed stamps that Crackerbox and Suzy Stamps has. It says, "Happy birthday to my favorite muggle." I stamped that on vellum because it's a slick surface. I used the StazOn pigment ink in chocolate brown, and I stamped that right onto that piece of vellum, then cut it into a flag banner. Really, really easy to do. I wrapped one edge around on the left-hand side, and then the other one I secured down by placing the Sorting Hat over the top of it. The last thing to do was place the whole thing onto a card base, and that finished off the first card. Very, very easy, and I love that my Sorting Hat is facing the right direction now. So moving on, I'm going to go ahead and stamp onto a die cut this time. Again, I'm using that same mirror image, and I want 2 of these dogs to look like they are facing each other. I've got a cute little scene that I had in mind for this guy, so I wanted to try and create 2 of these. What I'm doing is placing in that mirror stamp in my MISTI. I'm turning it horizontally so I have more room to work, and I'm placing my die cut right over the top of that in the corner where I'm going to be stamping. I placed the stamp over the top of that, and now I know where I want my stamp to go on my finished die cut. This time I'm using pigment ink. Pigment ink works really well too. You do have that playtime with dye ink as well, so if that's all you have, it does work. And I'll go ahead and stamp this down over the top. The reason I'm using pigment ink is because I wanted to heat emboss over this. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a couple stamps just to get a nice good amount of ink on there. And then I'll go ahead and lift my lid up, and it's time to place over my cardstock. Again, I'm lining up on the left-hand side there and in that corner down at the bottom too, and then I'll give it a very firm press. Let the cardstock kind of absorb that ink, pick it up, and there I've got my nice little dog. Now, I felt like it needed another stamping. You might not need it. I felt like mine did. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that cardstock, place my stamp down again after I've loaded it up with ink, and then I can place my cardstock right back into that corner. It's going to line up perfectly because I'm using my MISTI and everything was lined up in that corner. Then once I give it a good press, I can lift it up, and I'm going straight into heat embossing this. I am putting on some clear embossing powder. I want to use a little bit of emboss resist on my little scene that I have in mind. So I'm placing on clear embossing powder. That's why I use the pigment ink. Now to line up my second stamp, most of the time when you're using clear stamps, you can see right through them. You can kind of eyeball it. But with red rubber, you can't see through them. So for perfect placement, I like to use my Stamp-A-Majig. I have a video all about how to use this. I've used it several times. I will leave that video linked down below in the description box. But I just put my little clear piece in the corner of the Stamp-A-Majig, stamp with my acrylic block into that corner. Then I can go ahead and place that clear sheet right over the top, line up where I want my stamp to be on my die cut. Just be careful with this because you're using a clear plastic sheet. The ink isn't going to dry on there, so you have a chance of smearing, so just be extra careful and keep that in mind. Once I've lined that up, I'm going to place my Stamp-A-Majig right in the corner of that clear piece, remove the clear piece, then I can ink up my stamp one more time. My little Stamp-A-Majig is right where it needs to be. I can line up my acrylic block in the corner again and go straight down and stamp, and it's going to line up perfectly. Now, I got a good impression the first time. I didn't need to do a double stamping. However, you can double stamp with this. You can just go ahead and place your Stamp-A-Majig right where your acrylic block was before you remove it up, and then re-ink and place it down again. I did clear heat emboss over that as well. I just did that off camera, and now it's time to create my scene. So I wanted to create a little bit of a night scene as if these dogs are looking up at the night sky, and I wanted a heart-shaped moon. So I went ahead and die cut a heart from some label paper. I have gotten away from using masking paper. Only in certain instances where I'm going in with wet do I use masking paper. But even then, I still kind of go towards masking fluid. I find that the majority of the masking paper that I have found that I've bought and tried is not sticky enough for me. So I tried out some label paper from Amazon. Not only do you get more in a package, but it sticks so much better. It is very, very sticky, so I went ahead and just put it on my shirt a few times to remove some of that stick and then put it down. Even so, it still sticks really well. Now I put that heart down, I sponged through some distress inks, I used mustard seed, and I forget the other color. They'll all be listed down in the description box below, along with all the other supplies that I've used in today's video. I'm using my mini ink blending tool also for this, just for very, very quick ink blending. Now, once I had my moon done, my heart-shaped moon, I went ahead and placed the actual heart cut out right over the moon, so I didn't get any ink over that. Then I'm going to go ahead and take a grass die cut that I made, put that on the bottom, and now it's time to start blending my night sky. I should also mention that I have covered up all of the sides of my die cut where it meets the stitching. That way I'm going to have a nice white border around the edge of this. It's really going to help set it off from the background of this card. And once I have that done, then I can go ahead and start the masking and all that. Now for my night sky, I'm going for a galaxy look, so I did some blues, pinks, and purples in the background, and then I'll cover it all up, but let some peek through. And to cover that up, I'm using some gray and some black soot. That gray, I believe, is hickory smoke. So once I had the gray on, then it's time to come in with a little bit of black and really deepen up that sky. Now, while you're doing this, if you wanted to add a few little stars, you could, and I like to do that with paint. I left mine blank as it is. I just wanted the night sky. I really wanted the focus to be on those little silhouette dogs and have them be the kind of the shining stars. So once I had the sky done, I went ahead and first, before I pulled up my mask, put down the top portion to cover up the sky. I find it easier to line up the top portion of your masking while that bottom portion is still on. So you can kind of fit it together like a puzzle piece. Now when you do that, sometimes the mask rips on the bottom. These label papers are so stinking cheap, I don't even worry about saving them. So I just kind of tear them up and throw them away. So if they tear, it's not a big deal to me. Now on the bottom, I wanted this to look a little bit darker of a grass shade because it is night. So I used some peeled paint, and I'm going really heavy-handed towards the top. Then I added a little bit of gray on top of that to kind of smooth it out and blend it all together and add a little bit of darkness. Then it's time to start peeling everything up to reveal my scene. I absolutely love the way this turned out, and that little heart moon in the background was perfect. I was scared it would be a little too much, but I love the way it turned out. Now I also went ahead and peeled up the edges. There I've got some nice bright white edges for my background. And that is perfect because I decided to do some stenciling on the card base itself to kind of help pull the whole thing together and not look so bare. I also added a You Make Me Smile flag banner right on the bottom there for my sentiment. And like I said, I used a little bit of a stencil on the background on the card base itself to help pull the whole thing together. I used some distressing through the stencil as well. So everything kind of matched and had the same look. That finishes off my second card with the mirror stamping, and I absolutely adore the way it turned out. There are so many fun things you can do when you use that mirror stamp. I've got some more ideas that I can't wait to share with you in another video, but that does it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching. There are going to be links down below. Don't forget all the information down in the description box. Thanks for watching and happy crafting.